I never imagined starting from scratch at 38. Half a year ago, I finalized the end of a marriage that had lasted nearly 2 decades. 19 years reduced to ink on paper after my husband, ex-husband now, confessed to being involved with someone half my age. What stung wasn't only the affair, it was how casually he admitted it, like I'd simply expired. After giving him everything, my youth, my loyalty, my heart, he walked away like I'd been nothing more than a routine he'd outgrown. Those first few weeks after the split passed in a haze. I remember the quiet sobbing in the dark, the hollow nights lying awake with only silence for company, replaying every memory in search of where it all fell apart. In the middle of that storm, only one thing remained steady: my son, Ethan. 18, and growing into someone I barely recognized. He worked part-time at the resort spa with me, teaching kids to swim. Tall, self-assured, gentle in ways that reminded me of the little boy who used to hide behind my leg in crowds. After the breakup, he moved back home. He said it was temporary, that it made sense while he wrapped up certifications and considered college options. But I knew better. He saw what I was going through. He didn't say much about it, but just being there, the sound of his keys in the door, the quiet footsteps in the hallway, made the silence less unbearable. Sometimes I'd break down without warning, and he would silently put his bag aside, hold me close, and let me sob into his chest. "You don't always have to be the strong one, Mom," he murmured once, his chin resting gently on my hair. "Not when I'm here." Those words split something open in me that my ex never could. That was when our relationship started to shift. Not in a wrong way, but into something I hadn't expected. He became my sunrise coffee companion, my walking buddy after dinner, the calm rhythm in my newly restructured life. It began subtly. The brush of his fingers over mine as we walked, the way his gaze lingered when I laughed, how he'd drape a throw over me if I nodded off on the couch. Small, kind moments, too meaningful to ignore. I never planned for our closeness to feel complicated. But I'm human. I'm a woman who hadn't felt truly seen in a long time. And Ethan? He noticed. Not my pain. Not my past. Just me. Our shifts at the hotel rarely lined up, except Wednesdays. On those days, I'd walk by the indoor pool on my way to the spa, and there he'd be, giving instructions, his voice firm and confident, a presence that made people pause. Sometimes his eyes would meet mine across the deck, and he'd give me a look, a small smile, a nod. Just for me. And every time, I felt it, that faint flutter, deep in my stomach. I told myself it was pride, gratitude, nothing more. Until that night. I came home after a long, draining shift. My legs ached, and my temples throbbed. Ethan had arrived before me and was already in the kitchen, sleeves pushed up, something bubbling on the stove. "You're making dinner?" I asked, surprised. "You looked wiped this morning," he said, still facing the pan. "Thought you could use a break." I leaned on the doorframe, watching him. The smooth stretch of fabric over his shoulders, the ease in his movements. I shouldn't have felt my breath catch. He handed me a bowl, simple food, warm and comforting. But the look he gave me, as I took the first bite, made my hands tremble. "Thank you," I whispered. "You take care of everyone," he said, sitting down across from me. "You deserve that too." We sat in the hush that followed. I reached across, tucked a loose strand of hair off his forehead. My fingers lingered. His gaze didn't move. That night I didn't cry. But I also didn't sleep. I lay in bed, heart full of questions I didn't have answers for. Not guilt, not even shame, just a quiet ache, like something old was stirring, something I'd thought was long gone. From that night on, things felt different. Little moments became harder to dismiss. The nearness, when we stood together in the kitchen. The pause in his touch when our fingers brushed. The tone of his voice in the late hours, lower, gentler, almost like it belonged in a different kind of story. It wasn't just his actions. It was the way he looked at me. That gaze, steady, present, like he saw only me. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't gratitude. It was attention. The kind I hadn't felt in years. Not since long before my marriage died. My ex used to look at his emails more than he looked at my face. But Ethan looked like he never wanted to look away. And I hated how deeply I noticed. The staff at the resort decided to unwind with a casual gathering one Friday evening, low lights, wine flowing freely, and soft jazz trickling from someone's portable speaker. I hadn't planned to stick around, just long enough to show my face. That was, until I saw Ethan walk in, his shirt crisp and new, hair still tousled from the pool, a relaxed grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said, surprised at how easily the smile rose to my lips. He gave a shrug, though his expression gave him away. "Would have skipped it, except I heard you might show." That caught me off guard. I blamed the wine. Later, we drifted away from the others, ending up side by side on the balcony. The air had cooled, but I barely noticed. Every inch between us felt electric, like something waiting to happen. "You're different tonight," I said softly. He turned, one brow lifting. "In what way?" I hesitated. "You seem more sure of yourself." A slow grin formed, his voice almost a murmur. "Maybe I've finally figured out what I want." Silence followed, the kind that asks for nothing but lingers heavy and real. I folded my arms, not from cold, but to contain the flutter in my chest. Ethan shifted closer, not enough to touch, but enough to feel. "You all right?" he asked gently. I gave a faint nod. "Yeah. You've been holding it all together for so long," he said. "But you're not alone anymore. I'm here." I turned to look at him, the city lights stretching far behind us. For a moment, everything else, my doubts, the past, faded. There was just this. Just him. "Thank you," I said. "You don't know how much that means." He reached out, brushing his fingertips against mine. The contact was featherlight, but the air around us pulsed with energy. Later, back home, we said goodnight in the hallway. I lingered at my bedroom door, heart skipping with each step he took away from me. Just before entering his room, he glanced back. His gaze met mine, calm, steady, unreadable. "Good night, Mom." "Night," I answered, barely above a whisper. I didn't sleep, but this time, it wasn't sadness that kept me awake. It was a growing tension I didn't know how to name. What had always been comfort now felt volatile, like embers waiting to catch. We hadn't stepped over any boundaries, but we were teetering on the edge. The next morning, he was already in the kitchen, damp from his usual early swim. Steam rose from his coffee mug, and his hair curled slightly at the edges. He looked casual, like the night before hadn't happened. "Morning," I said, cinching my robe tighter. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, did you sleep okay?" Eventually, he tilted his head. "I was thinking, maybe after my shift today, I could finally show you how to swim. You've been putting it off forever." I blinked at him. "Seriously? You've always stayed on the sidelines," he said with a crooked grin. "Let me teach you. The pool's nearly empty at night." I should have said no. I didn't. "All right," I said. The thought stayed with me all day, between sessions at the spa, between folded towels and quiet music. I imagined the water, the way it would feel to be close again. Closer. By evening, the pool had emptied. Lifeguards packed away towels, and the families had all gone. I stood at the edge in a long-forgotten swimsuit, unsure of myself, until Ethan looked at me. He didn't speak at first, just watched, something unreadable softening his expression. "You didn't mention how cold it would be," I said, toe skimming the water. He chuckled. "It's not that bad. Come on. I'll help." He extended a hand. I took it. His palm was warm, sure. The moment we touched, the quiet from the balcony wrapped around us again, thick and unspoken. He stayed near in the pool. Too near. "Just let go," he said, guiding me. "The water will hold you." "I trust you," I murmured, unable to help myself. His eyes lifted to mine. His hands moved to support me beneath the surface, firm and careful. "I've got you." It should have been simple, a swim lesson. but my heart was pounding, and each contact sent sparks across my skin. "You're doing fine," he said, watching every movement. "Breathe. Let yourself relax." "Easy for you to say," I said, though I let myself drift. "I won't let anything happen to you." And I wasn't entirely sure we were still talking about swimming. He kept me close for a moment longer before gently guiding me upright. My palms found his shoulders as I steadied myself, the two of us now face to face in the shallow end, warm water circling around us like a hush. Neither of us said a word. His hand still rested lightly at my waist. My own fingers lingered on his arm. Every inch of space between us seemed charged and shrinking. "Ethan," I began, though the words dissolved before they could take shape. He didn't respond, just met my eyes with a look that said more than either of us dared to. I don't know what might have happened if I hadn't stepped away just then. Whatever had built between us fractured, but didn't fade. It clung to me long after we climbed out, wrapped in silence and towels, pretending it had all been ordinary routine. But we both knew it hadn't been. We hadn't crossed a boundary, but we'd walked right up to its edge. And the hardest part? I didn't want to step back. The days that followed blurred into familiar tasks, folding clothes, wiping counters, watering plants. Yet none of it felt the same. Not after that evening. I kept replaying the feel of his hands guiding me, steady and gentle. The way his gaze lingered, searching, wordless. I told myself it was just the comfort of closeness. That maybe I was just clinging to warmth after so much loss. But deep down, I knew it was more.
And Ethan?
He'd changed too. He didn't talk about that night, but I saw it in the way he moved around me. The careful way he paused before touching me, yet how his presence still hovered close. A brush of his fingers along my back in the kitchen, sitting shoulder to shoulder on the couch, our arms touching just enough to make my breath catch. One evening, I was curled on the sofa with a book, trying to focus, when he sat down beside me with a bowl of melting ice cream. "You skipped dinner," I murmured, not glancing up. "Wasn't hungry," he said, then nudged me gently. "You've been quiet today. Just thinking too much." He didn't press for details. Just leaned back beside me and spoke softly. "That night at the pool, it's been on my mind." I turned a page I hadn't read. My pulse jumped. "Me too," I said finally, voice low. He turned toward me. "I didn't want to make things uncomfortable for you." "You didn't," I replied too fast. "That's not it at all." His eyes searched mine, like he was asking for confirmation without words. "I don't know what this is," I whispered. "I just know it's there." He reached out, slow and careful, and slid his fingers through mine. It was a small gesture, natural, and yet it made my whole body still. "We don't have to figure it out tonight," he said gently. We sat like that, hand in hand, with the sound of the muted television flickering in the background. But neither of us was really watching. Eventually, I rose, afraid of what I might let happen if I stayed. "Good night," I whispered. He echoed the word. "Good night, Mom." Only it didn't sound like it used to. There was weight in it now. A memory. A pause. That night, I dreamed of being in the water again. Of floating. Of the way he had held me, sure and secure. When morning came, the sky was silver with rain. The windows streaked quietly while the air inside clung with damp calm. I kept busy, more than usual, scrubbing surfaces, reorganizing drawers. But every time I slowed, I felt that ghost of his hand wrapped in mine. By the time afternoon rolled in, the rain had thinned into mist, and the house fell into that peculiar hush only dreary weather brings. Ethan found me in the kitchen, drying dishes. His hoodie clung slightly from the rain, his hair tousled from work. "Got plans tonight?" he asked, tone light, but his eyes said something else. I gave him a sideways glance. "Should I?" He leaned against the doorway, casual but deliberate. "Thought we might finish what we started. In the pool." My heart skipped. "Ethan, no pressure," he added quickly. "I just figured you were doing really well. Thought maybe we'd pick up where we left off." And that was exactly the problem. Still, Something in me wanted to say yes. So I did. That evening, we returned to the dim glow of the hotel's pool. The air was warm, the surface calm. The world outside felt far away. Ethan was already in the water when I stepped out, the locker room door clicking behind me. He turned at the sound, eyes tracing over me for a moment that stretched too long. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. I didn't respond. I just stepped forward and let the water take me. This time, the lesson unfolded differently. Unhurried. Intentional. He touched me only when necessary, his hand grazing my arm to adjust my angle, his palm settling briefly at my back to steer me through the water. But every contact carried weight, and each glance spoke of things we hadn't dared to say. At one point, I lost my balance, more from nerves than the motion, and reached out without thinking. He caught me easily, his grip firm, unshaking. Suddenly, we were face to face. Neither of us dared to move. The water moved softly around us, the only sound a quiet ripple. I could feel the warmth of his breath brushing my lips. "I've been trying to ignore this," he said quietly. "Trying to do the right thing. But I can't pretend anymore." My throat tightened. This wasn't supposed to happen. But it did, he replied. "And it's not just in my head, right?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I leaned into him, resting my forehead on his shoulder. I trembled, not from cold, but from the weight of everything I'd been holding back. He held me close, his arms wrapping around me with care, like he was trying to protect something fragile. The world faded away. No expectations. No rules. Only the stillness between us. Then I felt his fingers at my chin, tilting my face gently upward. Our eyes met. He didn't speak. He simply leaned in. The kiss was slow, uncertain, a question asked with lips instead of words. And still, I responded. Just once. We stayed that way, close but quiet, the silence between us speaking louder than any conversation. The boundary we'd been dancing around was no longer in front of us. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not guilt. Not confusion. I felt seen. And I didn't know if I could unsee what had just been uncovered.